Good morning, everyone. It is 10 o'clock. Does it look like most people are on so we can hopefully make quorum?
Bill, you want me to go ahead and do the roll call then?
Yep, let me go ahead and I'll call this meeting to order. This is for the Nevada Resiliency Advisory Committee on October 25th, 2022, starting at 10 a.m. And yes, can you call this meeting to order and please take roll and mark me as present.
David Fogerson, Andy Anto, Jason Andrus,
Present.
Roy Anderson,
Roy Anderson's here.
thanks, Roy. Travis Anderson,
Here.
Noah Boyer, Elizabeth Breeden, James Grisley,
Here.
Jason Danon, Colonel Brett Compton,
Present.
Bob Denhart, Kelly Echeverria,
Present.
Andrea S.,
Present.
Janine Freeman,
Here.
Mike Heidemann, Eric, okay. Was that Mike Heidemann?
Mike.
Thank you, Mike. Eric Holt. Can you admit? Eric Holt is in the process of joining. Graham Kent. Mary Ann Laffoon. Chris Lake.
Here.
Carolyn Levering.
I'm here.
Ryan Miller.
Here.
Aiken Patel. Akin Patel, are you there?
Here.
Okay, welcome. Tennille Pierre, oh my gosh, Piera. Matthew Peterson. Ken Pointer,
Here.
Misty Robertson,
Here.
Rachel Skidmore,
Here.
Corey Zolfarino, Rachel Marchetti,
Here.
Carrie Underwood,
Here.
Mike Wilson, Stephanie Woodard, Bunny Bishop, Heather Lafferty,
Here.
Melissa Friend,
Present.
Casey, Sylvie Marks,
Here.
Catherine Nielsen, Samantha Laddick,
Here.
yeah, quorum.
Awesome, thank you. I'm going to close out agenda item 1 and go to agenda item 2. This is public comment. This is for discussion only. No action may be taken upon a matter raised under this item of the agenda until the matter itself has been specifically included on the agenda as an item upon which maybe action may be taken. Public comments may be limited to 3 minutes per person at the discretion of the chair or vice chair on this matter. Comments will not be restricted based upon viewpoint. To provide testimony during this period of public comment via telephone, please call in any time after 9:30 on the day of the meeting by dialing 1-669-219-2599. When prompted to provide meeting ID, please enter 686-738-8625 and then press pound. When prompted for a participant ID, please press pound. When asked to provide public comment, please press *6 to unmute your phone and *6 again when your comments are completed. Please advise that the YouTube stream will be between 60 and 96 behind, 60 to 90 seconds behind the live meeting. If you'd like to present public comment, please call in using the above number to hear the meeting live. First, do we have anyone that has called in?
No, there was none.
Do you have any submitted rental public comments?
No, we do not.
So this is my time. We'll wait until we do have any further. We'll wait the 90 seconds. I just want to say, hey, I'm growing this mustache to look like Chief Fogerson. Try to make it a little bit more handsome for you guys. I apologize. You have to be stuck with me today, which is weird because he's sitting in that room right there. So I think he kind of tricked me. This is called a bait and switch, which is fine. I'm so happy to get to speak to you guys. I actually feel honored. Does anybody else have anything for public comments?
Eric Holt. I just wanted to let you guys know I'm on the call.
Thanks, Eric.
Matt Peterson's also on.
Thanks, Matt. We'll get about 45 more seconds. And again, just
This
like
is Brett North, I'm on.
who was that?
Brett North out in Ely.
Awesome, thanks, Brett. All right, we're going to close out agenda item 2, public comment. Be advised, we do have public comment on agenda item 14 that you, if something comes to mind during this time period for this meeting, you will be able to express your opinions then. Open agenda item number 3. This is approval of the minutes. This is for discussion and possible action. The committee will discuss and review the minutes of August 2022, which have been submitted to your packets. This committee will determine whether or not to approve these meeting minutes. Do I have any comments?
Jeannie Freeman for the record. I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the August 22, 2022 meeting of the NRAC.
Thank you, Dr. Freeman. Jeannie Freeman with the first.
This is Andrea S. and I second the motion.
Andrea F. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Any discussion? Motion passes. Closing item 3, going to agenda item number 4. This is discussion on the status of the Nevada Division of Emergency Management Homeland Security's efforts to assist its partners. This is discussion only. John Backadall from DEM is interested in hearing feedback on the status of the DEM HS programs as they relate to protection and preparedness, response mitigation, and recovery efforts for emergency management and homeland security. The NRAC members are encouraged to discuss ways that DEM HS can improve its efforts to better support their needs. John, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Hey, good morning, everybody. John Backadall for the record. So on Dave's behalf, he's here for a few more minutes and then he'll be heading out for a road trip. But this is that part where, this being an advisory committee, we're looking for feedback, input from the participants of this committee to let us know what we're doing, whether it's affecting you or not affecting you. Is it a positive way? Is it not a positive way? So what are we doing that we could do better? What are we not doing that we could do for you? And what are we doing that's impacting you in a bad way that we should stop doing? So this is your opportunity to give us some feedback on how we could do better for all of our emergency management partners.
John, this is Jeannie Freeman for the record. This was some information that I shared with Chief Fogerson this past weekend when we were having a conversation. And I just wanted to give kudos to DEM. I think that what's been going on and the reorganization, the staffing that has come into place has really been incredibly supportive to us on the local level. And I've seen it on a national level when I participate in national calls and I participate in conferences and so forth. There's word about how Nevada is collaborating with other states and how Nevada has been engaging. And so I just want to say, keep it up. I know that that's it's important for us to have that. What I would like to see is I would like to actually see more communication from DEM to maybe all of the ESFs, not just with emergency managers about what those collaborations are, because sometimes it may not necessarily be trickling down to the support function partners who may need to be aware of some of those dynamics. And so if there's some sort of way that information can be shared across the board, just because our EMs have a lot of hats that they wear, and it may just not always be understood or getting to everybody. So greater communication would be beneficial from my perspective. Thank you.
So John, back it all here. So a follow up to that, are you referring to the local ESFs, like for instance, Carson City and all the other counties that you're part of for the health ESF 8, that it's not trickling down to that level? Or are you hearing things from other ESF partners from the state, like ESF 8 PHP, ESF 1 NDOT? That way I have an understanding as to what level this is being applied to.
Yeah, I guess it's not making it down to the local ESFs. So if that's either coming from EM or it's not coming from the state ESFs down to the local ESFs, that would be valuable. And I'm not talking just from a public health perspective. That is feedback that I've had from other local ESFs. So that would be valuable as well.
Understood. We'll see what this is John again. We'll see what we can do about helping facilitate that. On a lot of the communications specifically, we have added the 3 health districts as emergency management partners to make sure, especially with everything COVID happening. So we do have Andrea. I switched it to Carrie Rowe since you were promoted, and then Misty and Las Vegas are all 3 on our communication groups. I think you're still on there, Jeannie, but I added Carrie to make sure that so much of the information that's coming out is at least getting to you guys, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, thank you, John. Jeannie Freeman for the record. Yeah, I do know that you've added some people and I am still on the list. And just from a public health perspective, I think it's important for administration and stuff to be included on that when it comes to the health districts as well. I think that sometimes that's an assistant capability as well.
All right, appreciate the comments. This is John again. Anybody else looking for feedback, good or bad? What can we do better?
John, Matt Peterson and Elko, how are you?
Good morning.
I would like to say something that is continuing and needs to continue is the road trips and coming out and seeing us. I'm sure I'm speaking for all of rural Nevada, and if not, somebody chime in, but it's nice seeing those faces out here. I think the interaction with your staff and you guys coming to us, and then those workshops, I see that workshop just for Thyra continuing to expand, at least for us. I think we even came up with ideas while you guys were here of expanding that and including other partners in that, other folks through other state agencies. For us, hands down, the best service that we receive from the state is from DEM, and I'd like to see that continue. Some things that would help us, and I think we're already starting to work down that road, but every time I have a conversation with you guys, or every time that someone from the state comes up, they say, hey, there's money for that available here. I don't know if there's a better way we can publicize that, put it on the website. And then with these new funding sources, we explored going down that route with the Secretary of State funding for one of our courts, and a backup voting center is help coach us through that. I'm not saying you got to hold our hands, but point us in the right direction, get us talking to the right people like you have been, and I'm sure that'll help across the state.
John, back it all. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate that, and look forward to being back out there soon. Anybody else?
Hey, John, go ahead.
Just wanted to highlight some of the obviously the staffing changes and the investment in getting your folks up to speed on the security clearance processing, as well as just the grant processing. Definitely appreciate how that crew has gotten up to speed and has really taken an approach of providing a service and service orientation and collaboration to a lot of the partners. So just want to encourage that to continue, and for the partnership and collaborative approach to continue. It's helping us in the field.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Mr. Underwood.
Elia Chavarria for the record. I wonder if there's not an opportunity to circle back with past requests that have been made. So for example, last meeting, Dr. Freeman ask that you include after action reports and items for improvement and report out on those to the group. So to hear what's been done about that or what the plan is to address that. Or similarly, proposed ideas like this one next meeting would be helpful. Just to close the loop.
Kelly, this is John Backendall for the record. We're going to do that on agenda item number 8. We're going to give you some details as to some corrective actions we've taken internally for AAR IP processes and what we're going to be doing moving forward with more of a committee approach, presentations to NRAC, as well as the follow-up and the public accessibility to where there is complete transparency to this group and people like you, not to the public, to see our improvement plans and what we're doing. So there'll be a secure portal that you guys will have access to, and you'll be able to see when things are due, who they were assigned to, where they're at, and it will be completely transparent. So we'll talk more about that on number 8. Billy, you were going to say something, sir?
Yes, sir. I want to say I appreciate the turnaround with the grant side. You guys have been doing a great job to piggyback on what Director Underwood was saying. It's nice to, when we call, that the answer is not no. It's like, hey, how can we help you? So I do appreciate that fact, and I'm sure it's not just me, but you guys have done a great job. There's been a lot of change, and I get that it's difficult, but I like the method, the approachableness of it. So I like it from my side, and my office appreciates it as well. So thank you.
Really appreciate that. And if we don't have anybody from grants on here, we'll make sure that that information gets funneled to them today.
Does anybody else have anything for John? To be clear, I think this is John's meeting. As you guys all went through your agenda items, this is mostly his. So we'll piggyback with him again later, but we'll keep moving on to the agenda items, and we'll close out 4. And we're going to open up 5. Thank you, John. Good job. Good report. Southern Nevada Counterterrorism Center, SNCTC, and Nevada Threat Assessment Center, NTAC programs. This is for discussion only. Carrie Underwood is going to be filling in for Rachel Skidmore for LVMPD, and Lieutenant Robert Hagney from NTAC, both directors on there. So I appreciate your guys' time. I know you're busy, so thank you for that. This committee will hear from SNCTC and NTAC representatives regarding their programs and the utilization of the Homeland Security grant funds. We talked about this a while ago. I kind of like to see in through LEPSI and UAG, when we have programs, where does that funding go and how does it collaborate with the rest of the jurisdictions? Usually I was going to start with NTAC because they're up north and I don't show favoritism to Kerry, but he was listed first, so I'm going to have them go first. So I can't get chastised from that. So Director Underwood, would you like to please present out, and then we will get to Robert on that side.
Sure. Director Carrie Underwood, Southern Nevada Counterterrorism Center, for the record. And thanks for not giving me the extra time to study. So you can't win no matter what you do, Billy. All right, just for some sensitization, I'll provide a brief introduction to what the Southern Nevada Counterterrorism Center is. It is comprised of, the Fusion Center in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's housed at LVMPD headquarters as the host agency. It is comprised of the following agencies, and I feel it's important to start off with knowing where the investment in this center is from the organizations. Full-time employees staffed here in the Fusion Center from Clark County School District Police Department, City of Las Vegas, Department of Public Safety, Department of Homeland Security, CISA, Department of Homeland Security, HSI, Department of Homeland Security, Office of Intelligence and Analysis, Department of Homeland Security, Transportation Security Administration, Henderson Police Department, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, the National Insurance Compliance Bureau, the North Las Vegas Police Department, Nevada Department of Public Safety, the Rocky Mountain Information Network, and the U.S. State Department's Department of Diplomatic Security Service. Part-time employees here at the Fusion Center include Clark County Fire Department, Clark County Marshals, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, Las Vegas Fire and Rescue, Nevada Gaming Control Board, Nevada Department of Parole and Probation, Southern Nevada Health District, University Police Department, as well as attendees on information sharing meetings that we host weekly here from the U.S. Marshal Service, the National Park Service, the Department of Interior, Nevada National Guard, and the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. So there's a lot of investment here in our Fusion Center, obviously just from the different organizations. Regarding some of our grant fundings and our programs, one of the biggest investment areas here at SNCTC that we prioritize is the ability to develop and maintain a 24/7 situational awareness posture here in in our corridors and our critical infrastructure. Obviously, it's a 24/7 environment down here. And so we've invested heavily in that capability that we call Fusion Watch, where we have that posture leveraged by integrated technology capabilities that is essentially used by a combined commission and civilian staff across 6 shifts at all times. We have 34 individuals assigned to that Fusion Watch capability, where our integrated technology capabilities are largely housed. And what do I mean when I say that? And you'll see it on the various grant items that we have here. Our camera platforms in our hospitality and our infrastructure areas, you'll see that referenced quite a bit. Our ALPR platforms, automated license plate reader platforms in the major thoroughfares in and around our tourism sectors, certainly, as well as into and out of the valley. Social media atmospherics monitoring, the types of things that show whether or not we have potential hostile actors heading our way, those types of incidents that are going to likely create potential conflict environments that we can make our public safety and critical infrastructure partners aware of. Our unmanned aerial system monitoring capability, as drones are increasingly becoming a threat vector that can be leveraged, targeting mass crowds, large gatherings, critical infrastructure, everything from outdoor venues to large sporting environments. As you know, we've significantly increased in that area down here in the last couple of years. All of that is leverage. All of those technology and integrated technology capabilities require essentially this valley-wide capability, a mesh network, or the infrastructure to support whatever technology we deploy or becomes available that we can properly procure. Why that's so important, and regarding SNCTC's grant expenditures, the prioritization came from making sure that we established the infrastructure that allowed for that interoperable integrated technology deployments, no matter what those would be. In the future, we envision potentially having increased use of drones as a first responder, or even safeguarding, providing a safeguarding capability. We have the infrastructure to support those types of deployments because of a very responsible and prioritized grant request and grant funding approach to doing all of this. And some of the numbers, just so that you have them, just as of September 30th this year, the SNCTC has processed almost 1,100 suspicious activity reports into our center, 960 video captures, over 3,000 requests for additional information or assistance, almost 2,200 shot spotter events, another technology for gunshot detection in and around our infrastructure areas, as well as our high violent crime areas. Over 4,000 automated license plate reader alerts that we have processed here. And that capability ultimately has led SNCTC to be pretty much and I've verified this with the National Fusion Center Association, we're the most visited or toured fusion center in the country, because essentially a lot of the other network fusion centers, the other 80 fusion centers, are trying to see how this type of deployment can be done in such a manner that does not create privacy or civil rights, civil liberties concerns around the country. And we've been recognized by multiple organizations as doing that in a way that's sustainable. We here at SNCTC, we also have a fully operational investigative and SAR vetting capability. That's also not normal in the Fusion Center network. We have over 26 investigators from several different agencies that are following up on every one of those 1,100 suspicious activity reports that we have year to date. And I'd like to highlight, not stealing any thunder from my colleague, Director Hagney, but thanks to the partnership with Director Hagney, we in Nevada were able to be one of the few states that's fully compliant with the Federal Bureau of Investigation for receiving and timely follow-up and processing of what they call dual routed SARS or threats to life that FBI headquarters gets. Why that's significant, that's the type of threat information that, for instance, the shooting in Florida Parkland that wasn't processed because they didn't have the mechanisms for information to get to the state and local agencies that are able to actually act on it and get out there and potentially prevent a mass casualty incident. The state of Nevada, thanks to the partnership between the two centers, was able to process that information, receive it, and get it to the agency that has the best capability to act on it and potentially stop some either threat to life, whether it's directed at an individual or a group or mass casualty. So the counterterrorism section and that group of investigators vets every single one of those, as well as maintains a program. I want to highlight that we are able to leverage some grant funds as our threat assessment program, TAP, because what we're trying to do here in the state and certainly in our AOR is not have arrest be the only solution available. This is where we recognize individuals that have either mental health crisis related issues, some type of opportunity for us to off-ramp and leverage our community partnerships and some of those organizations that can provide services to lead to a long-term sustainable solution rather than a short-term incarceration solution. It's a great example there. We're able to partner with government health providers such as the Veterans Administration, but also with private providers such as Summit Health. And we developed a relationship recently where they're capable of providing mental health and health solutions to some of those that don't have the resources to obtain them. And also a major part is the partnership with the school district on threat assessments and those young students and young individuals in our community who are showing those signs of carrying out acts of violence. The analytical component here, what we call counterterrorism analysis group. I want to highlight for those that don't know that last year at the National Fusion Center Association Conference, the annual conference, that analytical group was recognized among the 80 fusion centers. They got the HISN Intelligence Award, which essentially awards the fusion center that provides the highest quality finished intelligence production into the HISN platform. So we were recognized for the quality of our analytical production by essentially the Department of Homeland Security, as well as our peer fusion centers for the quality of that. And that's a grant requirement. That's something when we're assessed annually as fusion centers, it's one of those things we have to do is post all of our distributable intelligence products and share them with the national network of fusion centers and our federal partners. So it was outstanding to get awarded there. I'm also very proud of that group because they produced what other fusion centers are asking for from us, an analytic writing style guide. And while that may not mean a lot to some people, we're one of the only fusion centers that has it, where we have essentially written exactly how our analysts will produce professional intelligence products. It's the do's and don'ts all the way down to how they're structured and what type of lexicon we use in those. That group also had a cyber analysis, kind of establishing a cyber analysis program that leveraged grant funds. I'm happy to say that we're going to actually sunset that grant fund. I believe responsible use of grant funding is important for us. We're going to transition that to sustainable funding here locally and not continue to go to the grant for that. And that was under the Zero Fox contract that we've been paying for. We have an outreach program, FLO, TLO outreach program. That is a police and fire partnership that has continued to grow. Some of the highlights, and they also leverage grant funds for things like deploying training in partnership with the See Something, Say Something program. The mobilization indicators out of the National Counterterrorism Center, we fully integrated, and we've already taught over 800 private sector partners on what suspicious activity is, how to report those things. We also run an operation vigilance program, which includes sustained partnership with critical infrastructure sectors on who the current leadership in those environments are. They know how to contact us. We go out and train their staff. And so that's a persistent effort where we're out with our critical infrastructure partners as well as our emergency responders. And we highlight critical areas every single month in order to build those relationships and maintain them annually. And the other thing we partner with is the State Department and our NGOs here in the environment to make sure that we're staying aware of the infusion of people from other parts of the world into our valley. And then we host training sessions with our NGOs so that as new citizens or asylees or refugees come into our community, the first interaction with law enforcement and fire is not a negative one, it's a positive one. And that way we can talk to them about how we can support them in our community and what other resources exist for whatever cultural, religious, or elements are applied to their particular background. We can get them in touch with the community so they have some sustainable relationships there. And again, the focus being that long-term partnership with our citizenry here in the center so that we can all work together to keep the community safe. Lastly, we have an emergency management and CIKR analytical component down here. We were able to reestablish the relationship with LVCVA so that there's a reimbursement of an analyst who focuses on special event assessments, tabletop exercise for the multitude of special events. And I'm sure I don't need to go over, the list keeps growing. If you don't know, down here in Southern Nevada, there isn't a weekend or a week that goes by without multiple significant special events. And so the practice sessions and the tabletops, as well as those written assessments are a major part of what we do down here. And then you'll see on the grant funding, the privacy officer. I want to emphasize, aside from keeping us compliant as a fusion center, and it's a grant requirement to have a privacy officer, that privacy officer is a practicing attorney and sits on 2 national subcommittees for the National Fusion Center Association. So we're driving national privacy, civil rights, civil liberties policy from the state of Nevada, which I think is a phenomenal investment. And certainly our influence is much larger than the size of our state in the National Fusion Center network. And I'd like to just finish by highlighting, as the director, I sit on the executive board for the National Network of Fusion Centers. One of my managers sits on multiple committees, including the grant committee, informing not just the Fusion Center network, but also the Department of Homeland Security, all the way up to Secretary Mayorkas, on how they can better support us as a state, as well as a Fusion Center down here. My privacy officer, as I said, sits on the legal subcommittee and the Civil Rights, Civil Liberties Committee. I have another lieutenant who sits on the technology committees about proper and responsible technology deployments in fusion centers. And my counterterrorism analytical and investigative teams are currently on an effort with the Department of Homeland Security to reinvigorate the national SAR process through their national threat and reporting effort, or ENTER. So that's our fusion center. If there's any, I forgot to bring up one grant item, and I appreciate this board and the process, the ability to build out a top secret facility here in the SNCTC has already led to multiple agencies, in addition to the ones I mentioned earlier, wanting to put full-time staff members in our fusion center once that's completed. And that'll allow for a real-time consumption and processing and sharing of information at the highest level, which is super important given the number of potential KST or threat actors that traverse Southern Nevada for the variety of reasons that they do. So that's my summary for the Southern Nevada Counterterrorism Center. I'll certainly take any questions now or follow up after the fact.
Thanks, Director. I appreciate that. If those that have not toured the Southern Nevada Counterterrorism Center, I would always encourage it. However, it will discourage you from ever looking at your phone in public because they can see everything. It makes you very hesitant. And I know we all look at funds, and this group is very specific on that because it's part of your jurisdictions with the HSGP funding. I'm always skeptical on where that money is going through the Fusion Center, LDPD, and jurisdictions. But however, last year during New Year's Eve, the ALPR, that automated license plate reader, they captured a guy while we were all in our brief outs. So it's actually really cool. It's nice to watch it, see it come to fruition. It makes you feel pretty safe. So I appreciate the fact that you guys are doing what you're doing, Director. And again, I never look at my phone in public again.
And Billy, if I could, just for the group, the event that you're talking about on New Year's Eve, as we started having hundreds of thousands of people flood the streets of Las Vegas, we had 2 individuals who had already killed more than one person, killed multiple people that day, and were essentially trying to disappear onto the strip. So that capability kept 2 individuals who had already killed that day from being out and amongst a large crowd of people.
Yep, thank you, Director. Does anybody have any questions for Director Underwood right now? Awesome, I'm hearing none. Thank you, Carrie, appreciate it. Always appreciate your guys' partnership. Director Hagney, are you ready to present out? I saw Selby come up. Are you guys related to that on site?
Yeah, we are in the same building, but I'll be talking today. Yeah, he's sitting across the hall from me right now. I can see him behind his computer screen.
The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, sir. For the record, Lieutenant Robert Hagney, I'm the director of the Nevada Threat Analysis Center. I'm going to go over some of the programs and what the NTAC has been up to. Just to back up on what Director Underwood was saying, a lot of our programs overlap. Director Underwood and I have been working diligently to make sure that we are not duplicating efforts. Our teams have been working a lot closer than they have in the past together to make sure that, we're not duplicating efforts and that we are tackling issues throughout the state to keep it safe. With that being said, the Nevada State Threat Analysis Center is a federally recognized fusion center with an annual grant funding of approximately $670,000. That's 1/3 of our full funding. The remaining 2/3 come from the general fund. Out of the grant funding, 63% of our grant funding goes to funding contract employee positions. That funding helps support the daily operations of the NTAC. 2 of our 5 analysts are grant funded, with the other 3 analysts being general funded, as well as terrorism fusion liaison officer position and our critical infrastructure and key resources program officer. They're both funded out of the grant fund. Fundamental component of what we do is to receive and process tips and leads and suspicious activity reports. We analyze that information and share it appropriately with our federal, state, and local law enforcement partners. The NTAC has a See Something, Say Something outreach program in conjunction with the Department of Homeland Security and various other methods for receiving tips and leads from the public and our partners. Holistically, the grant funding we receive supports our capability to achieve those results. The travel category of our grant funding is extremely important to the NTAC. Allows us to reach out to rural law enforcement agencies and provide training that they might not necessarily be able to get. The FLO-TLO program requires extensive travel throughout the state to bring training resources and critical infrastructure assessment services to those partners. These trainings have established over 1,000 members to the FLO program since its inception. These members provide critical information. They're the eyes and ears in the field of the NTAC. It's critical to have these relationships as these partners understand their area of responsibilities and can distinguish when something just doesn't look right. At the NTAC, while we do not have a specific urban area of responsibility, our AOR is the other 16 of the 17 counties in the state. Travel funding also allows our analysts to attend required federal training to maintain and enhance competencies in the area of analytical studies. Also, this travel category allows essential outreach with other fusion centers, including our partners in the south of the state, the SNCTC. Attending conferences like the annual Fusion Center Conference in Washington, D.C., or state conferences such as the San Antonio Fusion Center Conference. This outreach helps garner information to assist the NTAC in the intelligence sharing process. Prevention is a very important piece of what the NTAC attempts to achieve. Without the outreach and information sharing portion that was just mentioned above, we will not be able to work on preventative measures. Those preventative measures include, but are not limited to officer safety notices, state intelligence summaries, special event threat assessments, responding to requests for information from law enforcement partners. I know my partner down south mentioned a lot more than that. We too handle a lot of other areas that would just take up too much time to explain right now. Grant funding provided allows us to not only maintain capabilities, but also build new ones to keep Nevada safe through an all threats and all hazards approach. This includes homegrown and international terrorism. This is done in coordination with the National Network of Fusion Centers, state and local partners, and federal partners, which include Interpol, FBI, Department of Homeland Security, CISA, the Office of Intelligence and Analysis Section, to name but a few. I know my partner again had mentioned a lot more than that. We too have connections in all of those places. The NTAC also receives grant funding for the purpose of strengthening our capabilities through services and equipment, which includes maintaining our criminal intelligence database. Also, the purchasing of specialized computer hardware and software to include analytical tools, subscription services, and access to public information databases. All of these combined allow the analysts to perform many intelligence and analytical functions in support of the mission of keeping Nevada safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. I appreciate that as well. I like seeing the fact that the North and South can come together on this. I think it's crucial for our entire state and then also our region, because it's you guys border so many different places up there, as do we down here. So I love it. I think it's great. It's nice to see where the funding is coming from when we do those grants that we see every year. So thank you for that. Does anybody have any questions for Director Hegney on that one? I'm hearing none. You guys either did a really good job and left no questions out there, or now you just really confused everyone with all those abbreviations that you guys just gave us, which is great. That's usually what I try to do too. Kill them with abbreviations. They have no clue what's going on. Other than that, if I don't hear anything else, I'm going to close out. Thank you, gentlemen. I know if you guys are more than welcome to stand here as well, but I know you have busy days as well. So whatever you guys like to do, you're more than happy to still participate or get on with your day. Thank you for presenting.
Thanks, sir.
I'm going to close out agenda item 5 and go to agenda item 6. This is Cybersecurity Task Force. This is for discussion only. Tim Robb, he's our governor liaison, and this committee will hear a briefing on the establishment of the Cybersecurity Task Force as created by Executive Order 2022-11. The briefing will cover information on the task force membership, roles and responsibilities, and its contribution to the state and local cybersecurity grant programs required cybersecurity plan. Tim, are you on? John or Dave, is Tim going to be coming to this meeting, or do we need to table this?
Hey, Billy, it's John back at all. I'm texting Tim now. If we want to jump to the next one and we can see if he gets on board.
Yep, thanks. I'm going to table agenda item 6, and we're going to go to agenda item 7, pending Tim Robb's participation, if he can make the call today. This is the update on the State Disaster Identification Coordination Committee. This is at the SDICC. This is for discussion only. There is no possible action on this. I will be presenting along with Dr. Chris Lake from the Nevada Hospital Association. You guys will hear about a proposed draft request to update the SDICC relating to the ability to share protected health information from healthcare providers to emergency responders for a reunification efforts during an incident. The committee may suggest edits to the bill draft request, the BDR, for consideration. So I hope everybody read their packets on what this is looking like. I'm not going to go over each identification one, but if you go, that's under the NRS, the 414-270, we have highlighted the changes that we are looking for. So I will give you each person a minute and a half to kind of go pick that up, because I'm sure you guys forgot what you've already read. And then this is for discussion. So we'd like to hear about this. Oh, sorry, Rodney, I thought you were Dave. I apologize.
We don't wear the same shirt, so
it was a smaller screen. So I'd like to hear your guys' input. We want to move this forward. As you guys all know, there are some issues when it comes to presenting of information. I know we have a lot of health district people on this call, as you guys know as well. Disseminating that information is difficult. Who you're going to give it to, and that kind of stuff as well. So please, I'd like to have some discussion on this topic.
Hey, Billy, it's John back at all. So I'll start the conversation on this. This committee's been in effect for a long time in statute. A couple cycles ago, we submitted an amendment to modify it, to change some of the language, and then it ended up getting knocked around even worse through the legislative process, and we lost some of the character to what this should withhold and hold for us as we go through operations that need this information. So this is a cleanup to try and bring back the required support that our local health districts and health partners need to be able to communicate specific information about people. During COVID, this committee did meet monthly, and for a while they were meeting weekly when they had to do things like plan public burial internments and modifying EPA regulations for particulates to incinerate human remains. So there was a whole lot of planning effort that this committee undertook with a lot of support from the 2 medical examiners as well as the coroners around the state, and then the associated other representatives that are listed in 414-270. So it's very important. We have utilized this. DEM does have someone that sits on the committee as a non-voting member to make sure that agendas are in place and information is coming across, or if there's any questions on what we're doing and why we're doing, since this does fall within our regulations. So this is just a cleanup. It's part of our BDRs or bill draft requests that we have submitted from DEM. So if you guys have any comments, questions, concerns, it's for the ability for the government to be able to move private information during large scale events to make sure there's quicker resources for that individual, for their family, and for the agencies that are trying to support them to make response quicker.
Hey, Billy, it's Chris. Can I throw a couple editorial comments in here as well?
Of course, yes, sir.
So along those lines, this was a real issue following the Harvest Festival shooting between the governmental entities and the hospitals, related specifically to interpretations of HIPAA regulations and enforcement by the Office of Civil Rights. And we had worked with all of our partners following that. It came out of the after action report that we needed to work on it. And we developed some language that ultimately ended up going away through the legislative process. I won't get into how that all works. It doesn't work, but the language went away. But basically, when we held a conference right after the event with the Office of Civil Rights, all their lawyers, all the hospital lawyers, all the emergency managers, those kind of people. And we determined that the only way for hospitals to have absolute immunity to share the whereabouts of patients and what's going on with them in particular was for there to be a legislative requirement for hospitals to report that information. Similar to what we do with burn victims have to be reported to the fire marshal, shooting victims have to be reported to the local law enforcement agency. So there are some precedents for that in the law. And the issue is really about getting what would be considered patient private information, names, ages, things of that nature, to non-HIPAA related or non-HIPAA regulated entities, such as law enforcement and areas that are really working on things like family reunification and issues of that nature. So this gives essentially an absolute affirmative defense to hospitals if somebody were to allege a HIPAA violation. So from the hospital standpoint, we are in support of this, at the 40,000 foot level. And we are really supportive of this group and would love to hear the comments and concerns and things of that nature. So thank you, Bill.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I know you and I discussed this before. All emergency management, not in the state of Nevada, doesn't always fall under fire, where they have that HIPAA protection and that they've already been HIPAA certified or vetted. So it's a little bit difficult for those emergency managers when they're trying to work on the reunification center. So this would solidify that issue that they would be having for other jurisdictions throughout the whole entire state. Jeannie Freeman, you're up first, then Andrea, you're next.
Thank you, Jeannie Freeman, for the record. I think one of the questions that would come up is related down in the section where it talks about, it's under 629.043 under 2D, where it talks about the information needs to stay confidential and must be securely maintained. I think there's going to be some question about how the transmission of that data is going to occur. And I realize that when we're looking at the language, we don't necessarily put all of that detail when we're looking at this language, but that will be a concern. And that may be one of the pieces that gets some pushback, is how is that going to be? Who's going to be the overall holder of that? There should only be certain people who have access to it or who can request it. And then how is that going to be securely transmitted? Any data that we get from the state currently from the local level has to go through a secure FTP site. and so forth. And I think a lot of people think that email is secure, or if they have a little caveat on their email that says that this is confidential, can't be used by anybody other than the, you know, the sender and the receiver, that's not necessarily the case. And so I don't know if there needs to be a little bit more language that's put in there about the secure transmission as well, and how that gets arranged or who's responsible for that element. But I do see that as an area for pushback from healthcare providers. And even if there is support from the hospital association, I think healthcare providers may have that piece that becomes of concern.
Yeah, thanks, Jeannie. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. I know we captured that. We'll capture that in the minutes for our following meeting. And you're absolutely correct that we have a drill coming up this Thursday, and that's one of the questions when the health district will push this information out to me. How do they do that, and where do I store it? All of us do EPCRs for our EMS calls, and which has patient information, but that's all electronic, is embedded. So thank you for bringing that up, and we'll take that in our notes. Myself, Chris Lake.
Just to follow up on that, like we get data from the feds too. And when that data comes from the feds, the the identified data, like we have certain things that we're required to do that document that we've destroyed that data. And that's hard because how do you really destroy it? And so we have to have certain things in place. We have to provide that documentation and so forth as well. And so the usability of the data, so the transmission of it, the usability of it, and then how long is it going to be kept? And then how is it going to be swept or cleaned or destroyed, or however that, I think that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, Jeannie, thank you for that. I completely agree. One thing I would throw out and suggest is some of these things we should probably put in the accompanying regulations that are going to be developed as opposed to in the law, because a lot of those specific details may change with technology, with different things that we can't foresee. And the regulations are a lot easier to change because they don't have to go back through that legislative process. So
yeah, I think
that's excellent, though. We definitely need to solve that.
I think some of the terminology just here is maybe to add the word data transmission, data destruction, or something of that sort, so that, you know, which may include transmission and destruction, and then the regulations have the details.
Yeah, thank you, Jeannie and Chris. Just for the record, that was Jeannie Freeman and Chris Lake. Just please identify once you guys start speaking, just because it is, they're going to try to record this and track who's actually talking. But thank you guys, appreciate that. Andrea, yes, go ahead.
Andrea S. For the record, I'm with Washoe County Health District. Also at the same section as Jeannie's referring, I do want to concur with her on the destruction of data and how that's transmitted. That's a huge conversation we're always having internally, and like her organization, we also receive data from the feds and it's just crazy. Like sometimes, I don't know. I said, do you want me to send a picture of me like destroying a flash drive? Like, I'm not sure sometimes when they put certain requirements on us. I also had, and not so much that I'm asking to change the language, but maybe some clarification or maybe some offline conversations with the on the user end of this. Stuff as far as the report that should be submitted and looking for the exact language, and the data points that should be included. It seems like most of this falls in line with the HICS 254 form that our hospital should already be generating in the event there is an incident. And so that's capturing everything except that individual's telephone number and electronic mail address, which I think is that email. I just don't refer to it as electronic. Okay. Thank you. And then it also it does account for everything else that you're asking for. So I want to make sure that we're not duplicating efforts on the hospital's end. If they're already having to generate this document, that it aligns with what they're already doing and not duplicating efforts. I know you have the word should instead of must, which I like because that helps get around a little bit of that. But I do think that the hospitals, at least in the north, do victim reports, which do account for the person's address and phone number. So that with those two reports, I feel like we're capturing everything that you guys are asking for. I want to make sure that I better understand in the future how and why, where this goes and what happens to us, since we're doing reunification already in the north. And have a process in place. I just want to make sure we're not going to duplicate efforts or reinvent the wheel, and keeping it broad enough that we can keep going with our operations. unless it needs to be the state does everything exactly the same. So I just want to make sure that I better understand so I can articulate that and incorporate into future trainings, or if we have to modify any of our tracking boards and the reports that are generated.
Chris, like you have a question? Thank you, Andrea. That was, we agree, and there is always a tracking component and the way you present the information as well. So we do understand that. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, Chris, like for the record, just to comment that the HICS 254 is not a required document for hospitals. So while that may be done in the north, that is not necessarily done throughout the state. And the other thing is, I think in the language, the way I read it is, this is only if the county or the jurisdiction having authority needed to make that request. So if you already have a process in place with your local facilities and don't need to step outside to say Carson City or maybe a further reaching facility, then you might not even have to enact this new language. So just
Okay. I appreciate that. Just reminding me it's only for requests, and most definitely there always could be a situation where we need to reach to neighboring counties in Nevada, like Carson. So thank you for that clarification.
Go ahead, Jeannie.
I'm just curious about the future, like if this is something that we're able to get these revisions through the BDR, would this be something that we think we would want to collaborate across state borders too when it comes to some of this? Because when I think about Douglas County and I think about even just what we had experienced this past week when we had several law enforcement officers with fentanyl exposure, you know, those kinds of things, and they were across borders with hospitals. So I'm just kind of curious if you think that this could be something down the road that we would be looking at EMAC type stuff as well.
Yes, this is Billy. So me and Chris and Dave we had this discussion as well on what happens in Utah or Oregon or California. Obviously, we can't control what they do and what they push forth. However, this will still help our residents when they go there, that we have the authority to do that. And hopefully when they see that, they'll be able to track their patients because we've done that as a state. Or I'm sorry, their residents, not their patients. So no, there could be more discussions that I will leave that up to NDEM to push that forth one through legislation and two through the other jurisdictional states or border states.
Hey, Billy, it's John Backall for the record. So yeah, we could use EMAC, as Jeannie stated, for state-to-state resources capability, also accessing FEMA's DMAT and DMORT teams, whether it be a medical assistance team or a medical obituary team that we might need some additional clinical workers as medical examiners or coroners. So based upon this scenario, we do have two other avenues, state to state or state to Fed request. And then the counties can also have their own mutual aid agreements with their partners right across state to state as well. That doesn't necessarily have to run through us, but it gives the EMAC protections of the insurances as well as the assurances that you're going to get paid in the end when resources do move. So that does not restrict it. This just opens up more of the intrastate capability. And as Chris Lake talked about, all of that somewhat HIPAA understanding and misunderstanding information sharing that should take place as we move forward.
Thanks, John. Andrea, you have your hand up again?
Yes, thank you. Is this going to help, or maybe not, has there been a discussion about putting together an electronic system that captures all this? I know after October 1, there was a discussion about patient tracking and being able to do that electronically. Is this going to help support that, or are we going down that path?
And Andrea, let me be clear that EM track and patient tracking are curse words down here, that they are very difficult for us to maintain. Our county and the Southern Nevada Health District are working on ways of tracking. To ask a hospital to have duplication of entry of patients is unrealistic for them. There is no HL7, there is no transfer of data electronically to one another's systems. So we haven't found that perfect system yet. Through ESO is what we use down here. So we are trying to work on a coverall, and like I said, we'll have more information after this week on what that looks like with the dissemination and collection of information, of patient information itself. This will not, I don't think this will take the place of patient tracking and EM track through Jabari.
Can I just ask, if there is discussion on that in the future and there is a desire to look at something, whether it's just Clark County or the entire state can move towards, so we're on the same platform, that myself or a member of my team is included in that discussion?
Yeah, I have no problem with that. That would obviously be direction of the chair, since if he would have more say on that. But that'll be captured in the minutes as well. And the hard part, Andrea, so everyone's clear, is that every hospital doesn't have the same registration system. Some use Epic, some use Cerner. And so with that, it's very difficult to say you have to do this and if it's a one size fits all. But we are trying to work on that. And I appreciate, my health district down here has been fully supportive of us trying to get that. I'm selfish. It's the reunification that I need, and I need to be able to know where someone's loved one is when a family member calls. So that's our goal. And if there is some move forward, I would love to have. Obviously, the systems are similar but different in the north and the south. But you guys might have an answer that we don't have, and vice versa. Thank you. Anybody else? Who's that? Hey, Kelly, you sound like a robot. Sorry. Hey, Kelly, can you try to call back in? You sound like a robot.
Can you hear me now?
Kind of. Go ahead. Let's see what happens. I think what she was trying to say is that Clark County is awesome, but we can go from there. Does anybody else have any other comments? And if Kelly comes back on, we can reserve that time for her for public comment, and she can reiterate on there, but just to keep this meeting moving. Good discussion, Jeannie and Andrea. Sounds like you guys are going to be a lot part of that decision making go forward. It's going to take more of your day. Appreciate that. Closing out agenda item number 7, we are going to go back to 6. John Backendall is going to report on behalf of Tim Robb. This is going back to the Cybersecurity Task Force discussion only. We're going to hear a briefing on the establishment of Cybersecurity Task Force as created by Executive Order 2022-11. Briefing will cover task force membership, roles and responsibilities, and its contribution to the state and local cybersecurity grants program required cybersecurity plan. John Backendall, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Billy. This is John Backendall for the record. So Tim sent back some information. Sorry, I missed the call. He's kind of a one-man shop on the governor's team right now. The update is we're working on as quickly as possible towards appointments to the task force and hopefully to have a meeting in the next 2 weeks. We're excited to get moving on the discussions around cybersecurity and engaging partners from across the state to build a better strategy to address cybersecurity concerns going forward. They will have a chair appointment from someone from the governor's office. It may or may not be Tim Robb as we move forward to chair the committee. There's the whole list inside of the executive order that details the positions that will be selected. So as they get those appointments made and the meeting scheduled, DEM will be working on getting the grant applications submitted. Last week at NEMA, the National Emergency Management Association, this was a hot topic. Several discussions about how the horse was not quite in front of the carriage as this was released. So not a lot of information put out as to the proper ability to submit an application. We're looking at getting our application submitted timely. We will be basically submitting an exception, asking for getting our application in, but asking for additional time to get the statewide plan submitted. Currently, the statewide plan is a requirement. However, that did not go over real well with about 55 of the 56 states and territories at the meeting last week. So a lot of people have a problem with that they have agricultural, rural, and coastal areas that are quite sequestered, low in population, may not necessarily have the same requirements as an urban area. So there's some discussions on changing that or having annexes to urban, rural, frontier, tribal, that type of support inside of the plan. So there'll be more to come on that as there's discussions and negotiations moving forward. But our team internally is in place. They are prepared to submit the grant application. They have been talking with both CISA and FEMA on what the minimum requirements are. And there's several things that have to be part of the plan. And then there's several options that we were allowed to schedule for the funding of the money. So again, going back to NEMA last week, most states are saying they're going to put in for a training program, because if you only got $2 million for your whole state and 80% of it is pushed to your entire local government, it just does not leave a lot of money to do much with. So if the states and locals could work on an entire training program, that's what several states said is going to be their focus, even though it's one of the more low-ranking options inside of the grant process. The other thing, South Dakota so far is the only state that's declared they are not applying for the money, but there's at least 10 other states that are saying the same thing. They just need to get the approval from the SAA and their government entities in their state to go along with them to submit their, we're not applying for the money process. You either have to accept it or deny it and then submit your application. So at this point, South Dakota is the only one that's currently not. We are timely for Nevada. We need the committee to be created, the task force, and then to get that meeting so that they can decide what they want to do with the money in this first year and how we're going to move that forward over the next calendar year. End of report.
Thanks, John. I think this is the time that we bombard you with questions on all technical levels for cybersecurity, since you don't have all the information that Tim does. I do appreciate the fact that Tim is coordinating this task force. I think it's important, especially with we all saw those funds that are coming available to the state. It's only going to help us to be safer and more protected of our residents and visitors. So thank you. Does anybody have any questions for John that he can at least submit to Tim, or we can at least get on record? John, you dodged this one. I wish I had some questions to think of. I'm not that witty. So good job, good report. We'll thank Tim when we see him. I like the information on that. I'm going to close out agenda item 6. We already did 7. We're going to go to 8. This is State of Nevada's after action report and improvement plans. This is for discussion only. We have Rodney White, who looks like Dave Fogerson from DEM, HS, and John Backdahl. Mr. Wright and Mr. Backdahl will present Nevada's after action report and improvement plan process to the committee, with the goal of enhancing cooperation and transparency within the performance review process. Rodney and John, the floor is yours.
I'll start giving this John Backdahl. We'll give a policy type level review of what we're doing and hopefully answer Kelly at the various questions from earlier. So the request was made to be more transparent and to go through our processes and make things available to people that were either impacted through our efforts of exercise or real world events, or may have been assigned something due to an after action improvement plan. So we've decided to create a committee after each exercise and each real world event. And the policy group partners will be invited to that committee based upon who was engaged for this. So like COVID, heavy health partnership. So there's going to be health partners on the COVID review committee of our AAR when it is released. If it were to be a heavy hazmat incident, we would still have health partners, but we'd be looking at our ESF 10 hazmat as well as potentially other ESF partners to be part of that organization or structure for each committee. That committee is going to be responsible to be the first reviewer of the final draft of the AAR as submitted, and from there give feedback on multiple factors: operational components, communication, policy group, as well as potentially governmental influence on what we need to do moving forward. So once we establish that committee, for instance, after COVID, we're going to have our health partners, General Barry, Bill Elliott as our preparedness manager. We'll have DT from health. We'll have myself and Dave on there going through and assessing what we're going to do with the final product. Is it approved at that point to move forward? Then we want to present the draft to the NRAC committee so that you guys can see the draft before anyone else. You'll get to see the information that we're supply any additional feedback more appropriate towards the improvement part of it. And then from there, it will be released to our local partners via email and listserv. We will never post these on our website. We do not want necessarily someone for nefarious reasons to capture what we did wrong and what our improvement plans are to prevent that from happening. So it will be for official use only, released to select people or emergency management partners so that they have the information and they have the awareness to be able to stay in tune with what we're saying, what we're doing, and offer some support and advisory information to us. From there, we're looking at having an improvement plan change to the way we've been doing things. And that will lead into what Rodney's going to talk about. So basically, we're starting with multiple phases. We're going to have a policy group. After that draft is written by an internal group or a contractor, then it will go to NRAC. Then it will go for public release in the fact of public partners, not necessarily the general public, and then follow up on our improvement plans as we move forward. So Rodney, if you want to add some more information.
Yeah. I think this is a long way to change. When I stepped into this position last year, tracking kind of stopped because of multiple different people in this position, and looking at how they used to track it was a very, very long Excel spreadsheet. Couldn't make heads or tails out of it. And so I think hopefully the system that you guys are going to see today will help us better, one, track what we need to make sure that things have gotten accomplished, or we're at least making progress in some of these corrective actions that we've identified.
So if you guys, this is John, don't mind going to your attachment for agenda item number 8, and you'll have a visual as to what Rodney's talking about.
There you go. Megan has it up there on the screen. So what we're going to do is after the committee gets done reviewing, we start assigning the owners of these improvement plans and corrective actions. We are going to put this on a dashboard on our website, so that you should be able to go and click on the exercise or the incident as it occurs, and then it'll pull up all these corrective actions. For those that don't have the Homeland Security Exercise Evaluation Program background, they list the corrective actions in 5 elements of the POETI model, which address capability elements in planning, organization, equipment, training, and exercise. So when we identify one of these corrective actions, we assign it to one of these capability elements, and then we'll list that onto the dashboard that you see here. As you scroll down, you'll see when we pull up the dashboard, any corrective action for that event that was identified as a planning capability element will all show up on this item right here. And it'll outline for that event or incident what those issues identified were, what the corrective action is, who's the primary organization responsible. There's going to be a status in progress, not started, drop down list that you'll see, and then it'll give you a percentage complete of that corrective action that you see there. So this is how the dashboard will look for each one of these after actions that we put up, so that you guys can see what is moving forward after something's been identified.
This is John again. To add to this document that you see, there is about 6 or 7 more columns that, to keep the document somewhat decent font to where you could see it. They're not completed, they're not filled in, but it does have the date things are assigned, the date they're due, and additional information. You'll be able to pan through all the different, again, activations or exercises, and then follow through each of the 5 elements of POETI to make sure you can see where things were categorized, who they're assigned to, where they're at, when they're completed, what the improvement was. There'll be a lot more information. This was just a snapshot of a single page, and actually half of that page, so that you could get an idea. There's going to be some visual graphs and components to it, as well as the detailed narrative. So you can track and you can see what our failures were and what we're doing to improve those. And then this will also help us when we're doing THIRA SPR for the threat and hazard identification risk assessment, and the improvement planning process, which goes into our IPPW, the Integrated Preparedness Planning Workshop, where we collect all that information and define what our gaps are. And if we continue to see a similar gap, which creates trends, we can use that to help associate the funding to help reduce that and make true improvements and not just say we did something. So again, there'll be a bunch of policy level stuff that translates down into the complete transparency of all of our exercises and all of our real world events. You are going to see, when you see the COVID after action report, it is not in the typical HSEEP format. HSEEP is Homeland Security Exercise Evaluation Program. If we're activating, it is not an exercise. And a lot of those steps do not meet the intent of what we are trying to define of what we did, what we didn't do well, what we may have done well at, and what our best practices are and what our improvements are. So when you see the after action report here in the next several weeks, you will see that it's in a little bit different format, but it clearly identifies what we did, what we didn't do well, what we did pretty well, and things that we can continue to work on, and things we identified as a best practice that we want to share with partners. It is a state level after action. We realize local level did a lot of their own work, and what we do and what you do are two totally different levels of activation. So this was state health, FEMA, and Nevada Division of Emergency Management employees that went through, answered the series of questions, had plenty of time to do free talk, and it's in a slightly different format, but I think you'll appreciate it because I think it lays out much better than an HCP AAR, especially for a real world event. So kudos to our contractors who came up with the format and modified all of our information to lay out into this. It'll be color identified in red, yellow, and green for what we sucked at, what we did okay at, and what we were rock stars at. So a whole lot of red in there. So I hope you appreciate that. And you're going to see a very long list of hundreds of an improvement plan list that we will be working on over the next 1.5 to 2 years to make ourselves better.
Thanks, Rodney and John. I don't think you guys suck, by the way. I think you guys do an amazing job and trying to wrangle all of us in. You guys do good. Thank you. I appreciate it. Does anybody have any questions for John or Rodney on that? Andrea, go ahead.
Not so much a question, more, I really like this. And I'm just thinking about what staff members being mad at me because I'm going to say, I think we need to do this format. I agree with you. We followed HCEEP and our COVID at the health district. We did 3 AARs to chunk it up, but displaying it, I really like this. And I think it will help us just keep it in the forefront of our other divisions and how we all collectively have tasks to work on, and it doesn't ally with any one program. Oftentimes with public health preparedness, it just falls on public health preparedness to try to fix everything. And obviously that's not realistic, especially in the aftermath of COVID and what we've learned. So I just want to say thank you. And Rodney, I'm probably going to call you to pick your brain because I want to make it look like ours look like this. And thank you for being transparent. And I would love to learn from stuff that you have identified that maybe we didn't, but we should have. And this is an opportunity for us to see that where we may have not thought of something and then continue to add to things that we need to work on internally as well.
Thank you. I'm not going to take credit. That's going to go to Megan Hall and Sharon Luce with Division of Emergency Management. They know how to work smart sheets very well. I have my training wheels on and I am trying to learn it as fast as I can, but this is a really great system. I saw Smart Sheets last year and we've been contemplating how we can move this forward. So it's really nice to see that we can actually move this forward and make it user friendly for everyone. We are going to have kind of password access so that certain folks can only see this to kind of maintain some of that security things. But that we'll get out to this group later of how that's going to work. Like I said, I'm still learning that as we go, but hopefully that'll help address some of the security issues as well.
Thanks, Rodney. And Andrea, just to be clear, plagiarism is the greatest form of flattery. So when you steal from them, it's okay. You're flattering them. So do you still have another question, Andrea? Your hand's still up. Chris Lake, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Kudos to DEM for that. And I second everything Andrea just said. With that, is it possible to get a before publication draft or even just like a couple of pages so we can take a look at what that format looks like? I think we're in the midst of doing our after action report as well. And if we could maybe mirror that that same format, it might do the state some benefit, as they'll all be easy to read.
Hey, Chris, it's John Backadall. Can I ask that your timeline just wait for 2 weeks and you can see the whole thing? We're that close to releasing it. It's so for multiple reasons, DEM chooses not to release it right now. And in 2 weeks, we'll be more than happy to have the final draft available and you'll get everything to this group first. Since you don't have another meeting until next year, you'll get it via email release so that you all can see it and start to have your comments and feedbacks available for the next meeting when we physically brief out the report and ask for additional information before it's released to the rest of the emergency management world in the state. Does that work for you?
No, that's perfect. I don't need too many excuses to postpone writing another report. So 2 weeks is a godsend. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Chris and Andrea. Good comments. Does anybody else have any comments or questions for John or Rodney? All right, I'm hearing none. I'm going to close out agenda item 8 and open agenda item 9. This is regional preparedness workshops. This is for discussion only. John Backadall will review with the committee the regional preparedness committee workshops events that were held in Elko, Carson City, and Las Vegas. Mr. Backadall will solicit input from those who attended. John, the floor is yours again.
Thank you. So John Backadall for the record. One, we appreciated everybody's time and attention to attending those. We know it was a big ask for the whole week. It was a very successful 3-week tour around Nevada. As Billy mentioned, we went to Elko first and had a much commented improvements that we could offer to when we came to Carson City and did the Western Nevada one. And then we got more improvements there that we took down to Southern Nevada. So we would like to think we did better as the process went on. You may not think so if you sat through that week, but take that with a grain of salt. A lot of information was shared. You were able to complete the THIRA within those first 2 days. Then you got to hear from our mitigation, our finance, our reoccurring grants, and our recovery teams to explain to you what they do, how they do, and why they do, all the information they ask for, all the processing they have to do. So you get a better understanding that this isn't DEM driven, it's federal rule driven, then state rule driven, and then there's local rules on top of that. There was great information shared and exchanges between those 4 programs back and forth with your finance and grants people, as well as the EMs and ours. Then we went into the JRA. So we did the jurisdictional risk assessment, information sharing. They weren't quite ready to do a workshop yet because the information hasn't come from federal health partners yet to relay that to you. But you've gotten an idea now of what they're looking for, how they're doing it. And then we actually used Washoe County and Stephen Shipman's paperwork that he'd been submitting out to start the Washoe County process so people could see how they do their process. And then from there, including the diversity and equity information that FEMA is asking, and as well as every federal agency is asking for in their processes. Then we did the integrated preparedness plan workshop. So you've got an opportunity to discuss what your training and exercises are going to be over the next 3 years. And then we went over the EMPG grant requirements as well. So people got to see an application from last year and what they plan to do this year. So in a week, you were able to define your threats and hazards. You were able to take those, look at what your potential gaps may be in your jurisdiction, and then identify a priority and start to build your EMPG application this year before you're even thinking about applying next year when we actually get a notice of funding opportunity. In each jurisdiction, we also did a separate tabletop exercise based upon the requests from that region. So out in the Northeast, in the Elko region, we actually did an evacuation sheltering process where a big focus on the evacuations, on what they could do, when they could do, how they would do it based upon incidents that may happen in their very, very rural areas that have very large crowds and how they would handle that with the very limited resources they have. Then we came over here to Eastern Nevada in Carson City, and we did, was it sheltering workshop? Sheltering tabletop, sorry. And big kudos to Kelly Echeverria from Washoe County. Gave us a lot of the questions and lead-ins into that to help us define with the other counties that participated and tribes here in Carson. And then in Southern Nevada, they wanted to work on the interstate mutual aid forms and how they're worked, how we use them, and actually exercise that a little bit to where we got to fill out a form and have it actually reviewed and see if it made sense to the groups. So by the end of the week, you actually had 4 exercises done. The thyroid was a workshop, the tabletop was an exercise, the integrated preparedness plan is a workshop, and then the whole week was a preparedness workshop. So anybody who needed an exercise, you got exercise lambasted with 4 exercises in 1 week. So there will be AARs coming from that process. The THYRA is the actual document, is your after action from that process. The IPP, the Integrated Preparedness Plan, will be slightly different this year. Rodney's working on developing a 3-region approach in there so that we capture each region separately instead of a statewide process. And then your tabletop will have an AAR component to it. And then the whole workshop for the week. I've gotten a lot of feedback, Rodney and I have, from multiple tribes, multiple cities and counties, as well as other EM partners, from the transportation folks, the public safety folks, and our health folks that attended. So you're going to see lots of information coming out. To capture all of that and to make all of the information available, we have the page on the front of our web EOC. We are now working with everybody who presented, and we're capturing what they presented and putting it on web EOC. So when you open up our web EOC, there'll be the option to sign into the state, Washoe or Clark County, and then there'll be a workshop page that you can click on, and all of the presentations will be in there. All of the forms we shared on how we're doing our HSGP and EMPG tracking of our priorities, where we're at, how we're closing gaps with that POETI model again. Everything that was presented will be on there. We're hoping to have that done no later than 2 weeks from now. We've all been busy in multiple directions, and we're trying to herd the cats and get everything collected and have it on there. Once it's all there, everyone will receive an email that all the documents are there. Please feel free to log in and pull whatever you want. So the forms will be in soft form, so you can take it, you can edit it, steal it, borrow it. Bill calls it best practice. So whatever you want to borrow, please borrow and use it to your extent. I will ask for those Smartsheet forms. If you don't have a license and you need a form, work with our team. We recently sent Megan and Zach in our grant section over to training in Washington for a week on how to really get good at these forms. And that's where the exercise form came from. That's where a lot of the other forms are we're using internally. So take an opportunity in a couple of weeks when you get the invite, go in there, log in, take advantage of all the data that's in there. And then we've listened to all of your feedback. This will not be a week of your time next year. If we have a mandatory grants training that falls in, we will include it into our processes next year. If we're going to get you together, we're going to kill as many birds with one stone that we can. You will get all of the mandatory stuff in a week. We've heard the comments, we've heard the feedback. Appreciate everybody liking the opportunity to see our team, to have the opportunity to talk with everybody and get more aware of our programs. Next year, we're looking to get this done in 2 to 3 days max. So it will be reduced. You're not going to have everything that you had this year. Maybe we do that bigger thing every 3 years. Maybe we start to integrate more of this into the preparedness workshop through NEPA. But our goal is you see everyone at NEPA at a 6-month interval, then the opposite 6-month interval, you're going to see everyone from DEM in your jurisdiction. And we're going to have that constant integration, coordination, and cooperation every 6 months. We should all be able to get together, and hopefully that enhances our programs and we can listen to you guys and make ourselves better so that we're meeting your needs. That's the end, Billy.
I wasn't sure I was gonna let you keep going, John. I like the workshops. I thought they were great down here too as well. I appreciate you guys, the feedback that we've already given, and you guys have already addressed. Megan, you have a question or a comment?
Just a quick comment with all the discussion about smart sheets. Just be sure that you look out for the committee members in your emails. If you see, Rodney Wright via smart sheets, know that that is us. That is the platform that we're working on. So just don't be off put by that. I wanted to give the committee members just a warning.
Awesome. Thank you, Megan. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? All right, I'm going to close out agenda item number 9 and go to 10. This is the grant status report. This is for discussion only. Suze Coyote from DEM is going to head this. The committee will receive quarterly grant reports, which will outline the spending status of Emergency Management Performance Grant, EMPG, Homeland Security Grant Program, HSGP, and Emergency Preparedness Working Group Grant, EPWG. The committee will also be briefed on the status of current and expected grants. Suze, are you on?
Hi there. Yeah, I am. Hi, Suze Coyote for the record. The grant status report is attached in the meeting materials for your review. All the grant programs with open subawards are listed in the report. It shows the subrecipient agency, project, original award amount, any re-obligated funds that were received, amounts spent as of the last reporting period, the funding stream of the grant, and any de-obligated amount, and the percentage of the awards spent as of the last report received. The FY22 HSGP grants, the Homeland Security Grant Program grants, have been issued as of October 19th. The FY21 EPWG Emergency Preparedness Working Group grants have been issued as of October 21st. The FY22 EPWG grants will be issued in the next few weeks. The FY22 NSGP Nonprofit Security Grant Program grants are pending the chief's signature and will be issued in the coming days. The FY22 EMPG our grants are being prepared for the chief's signature and will be issued in the coming days. The DEM is preparing the application, as John said earlier, for the state and local cybersecurity grant program, which is due November 15th at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I am happy to answer any questions regarding this report.
Suze, this is Billy Samuels. Can you email that report out just so we have a little bit quicker so we can get it to our grant people and some of the recipients for the funding of these upcoming grants that are going to be funded?
The report out that I just gave you?
Yes, please.
Yes.
I do get hit with questions on when those funds are going to be coming available, so thank you very much.
You bet.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments for Suze? Awesome, thank you very much. I'm going to close out agenda item 10 and go to 11. This is discussion of potential legislative requests for the 2023 session. This is discussion only. John Backendall from DEM will solicit input from the committee on the legislative needs related to emergency management and homeland security for the 2023 session. John, the floor is yours again.
Hey, John Backendall for the record. So when it comes to our BDRs, our bill draft requests, there's dates as to when things have to be submitted, dates to when they're made available to the public. So currently our bill draft requests that we have submitted are not available for public communications beyond just the title of what we've done. We can't give any details until after mid-November, once the governor's budget has gone through the finance office and they have a document that's available for the public release. So the number one thing that we've talked about already, the SDICC changes, because that's a lot of this committee and the public input that we're looking for to make sure those changes happen appropriately. We're looking for some changes in the emergency assistance account, the EAA. And it allows us to have access to our reserve account to facilitate needs during emergencies as well as non-emergencies is what we're looking for. A couple of legislative cycles ago, we also submitted a bill draft for IMTs to develop incident management teams. And with that, they were supposed to be incident management assistant teams, is the way the terminology is written in there. And that was to facilitate support to EOCs as well as field actions. We have been working on that for quite a while. There was some bad verbiage put into that they would be volunteer IMTs. Don't know many people that want to volunteer forever other than our good graces of the Red Cross people. So we're looking for some changes in terminology on that. We also, when we left the Nevada State Police, the Department of Public Safety, and then last legislative cycle, they went through a change of NHP to Nevada State Police. There is no representative from DPS or NSP on our Nevada Commission for Homeland Security. So we're looking at making sure that that gets adjusted and that there's a representation from DPS on the committee. And then our regular budget stuff that we've submitted to help our budget moving forward for the next 2 years. And then the final thing that was submitted was to change the date for when school plans are due. They're the only ones that are outside of the end of the year cycle. And it seems to fall when they're not in school. So they were asking us to see if we could do something about that date and make the plans available for submittal at a different date. So those are the basic informations of the BDRs that we've submitted. What we want to continue to ask this committee, since you're advising DEM, is are there other things that you've seen in our statute that aren't necessarily appropriate anymore? They probably should have never been there, or hey, why don't you guys have the authority to do this? That you give us that feedback so it's captured during public forum, and then we can use that. And we still have time this year. We can recruit from our delegations to see if someone could sponsor a bill for us, or if we could get the governor's office to sponsor a bill for us and make an immediate change in the January through June cycle next year. So looking for any feedback in what you see on potential bill draft requests that DEM should be looking at.
Hey, John, this is Kelly Echeverria for the record. Has there been any discussion on the changing the NRS regarding the word mandatory as far as evacuations are concerned?
There has not, but that is definitely something that this John Backetall, definitely something that we can circulate through the governor's office. Probably again, wait till after the election so we see where things lie, and then we can throw that forward, and we will have time after that. So I will take note of that and add that to the list.
Thanks, Kelly. Does anybody else have anything for John regarding the legislative portion? I'm hearing none. I'm going to close out agenda item number 11 and go to 12. This is updates from DEM tribal liaisons. This is discussion only. The John Backetall Show will update the committee on the recent tribal engagements at the FEMA Region 9 Tribal Workshop and the DEM HS Regional Preparedness Workshops. Go ahead, John.
So John Backetall for the record. I used to have the privilege of directly supervising the tribal liaison officers. They are DEM staff that liaison out to the 27, now potentially 28 tribes. It seems that we may have another tribe that's going to be federally recognized as a Nevada tribe as well. So we also have Crystal as our FEMA tribal liaison to Nevada. So we have 3 tribal folks that go out and participate in all things tribal preparedness, tribal response, tribal recovery, and tribal mitigation. We had a great representation at the 3 DEM preparedness workshops in Elko, Carson City, and Clark County. Had a total of 11 of those tribes participate in person and 1 remotely. That was by far our greatest participation, probably cumulative, in the entire THIRA process that we've done. We also have the Tribal Region 9 workshop that was held in Reno. So we had all of the Region 9 CONUS states, California, Arizona, and Nevada represented there. Our tribal liaisons, both federal and our 2 state liaisons, got huge kudos in the open forum where everyone was speaking, while our other states and FEMA did not get such nice things said. And then in a private breakout by region, our tribes had a good listening as well as participation in telling us what we could do better to help support them. Out of both the workshop from FEMA and the Nevada workshop, it became very clear that they felt the same thing during COVID response that all of the local governments felt, that we could really benefit from having the G402 NIMS, or National Incident Management System, ICS, for elected and appointed officials. It's a shorter course that basically helps our bosses identify where they fit into a policy group type role. Give us your goals, let us develop objectives and tactics to meet those goals, and then report back to you and help keep them at a 30,000 foot and let us operate in the weeds. So they're asking for the similar type opportunity that a lot of the counties have asked for. So out of those workshops, we got that as a great feedback. The final thing that the tribal LNOs are still working on is the tribal communication boxes. Years ago, Homeland Security grant bought each of the tribes these communication boxes, and anybody that knows anything about electronics that are 10 to 12 years old, they've hit their life cycle if they've ever been updated. So a lot of this stuff doesn't work anymore. It's out of its life cycle. So our communications team here inside of mission support has developed a plan. They're working with the tribes. They have had a much cheaper and much more user-friendly platform that they're going to use off of their satellite phones with satellite database, all of that kind of information. And we should be able to continue to fund it through the DEM programs. And we're not necessarily looking at reaching out to Homeland Security or EMPG for any additional funds at this point in time. So those three tribal liaisons are working with our mission support team and John Fansler specifically with our communications team to help identify, resolve, and train them on their new equipment as we move forward. Bill, anything you want to add from tribal perspective?
No, well, I think that our tribal liaisons are just working very, very hard. They are very diligent and working with each and every tribe. And it's also helpful for us to be try to work with not only the tribe, but the county that they reside in, so that there's better understanding between the tribe and the counties.
Excellent. So that was Bill Elliott for the record. That's all we have, Billy, on the tribal update, unless anybody has any comments or questions about their efforts and their future programs they're working on.
Thanks, John. I don't see any hands up. Does anybody have any questions or comments for John or Bill? All right, hearing none. Closing out agenda item 12. Going to agenda item 13. This is supporting the upcoming 2022 and 2023 elections. This is discussion only. This is John Backadal. The committee will discuss the upcoming 2022 and 2023 elections with an emphasis on how emergency management partners can support our election partners. Go ahead, John.
Again, John Backall for the record. I want to thank everybody for what you've been doing locally, because that's where this all starts, the election security and integrity for what's going to happen here in the next couple of weeks. We've been planning at a state level with the Secretary of State's office. They've been giving us routine briefs to our entire staff. They've been giving us secure briefs at the national level. We do them here at the SCIF with our analysts, as well as people who have clearance to get the trends and get the ideas of what's going to be potentially happening over the next couple of weeks. Lots of mis, dis, and malinformation programs that are trying to be countered by our federal government partners. So beyond those briefs, next week we're planning on, we have a 3 tabletop exercise that we're doing with the Secretary of State's office, with DEM and some of our immediate private partners. We are doing an urban bomb threat, a rural bomb threat tabletop. We're going to do an urban active assailant threat, and then a power outage over most of the state threat. And what is the state going to do to support local clerks, local emergency management to make sure election day still goes off. So we've been talking about what we can do to overcome certain things in the state for this group's awareness. Every sheriff is up for election this year in the state. So if something bad happens at an election, the sheriff is on the ballot in that jurisdiction. So there's complications that could arise on who can respond, what their authorities are at that location, what they can and can't do, because there could be political influence done for their election. The good news is 5 of the sheriffs won election during the primary. So we only have the other 12 up for election across the state. So we are planning on other resources that would be available to assist with some of the scenarios. We're planning on our ESF partners and what their capabilities and limitations are when it comes to a statewide or majority state loss of power for whatever reason. The Secretary of State's money, if you don't remember, was awarded through the Homeland Security grant, $214,000 roughly something dollars 2 years ago in the 2020 application process for this type of work. They've been using that money. They've been coordinating with local clerks for hardening areas, for securing areas, both in personnel as well as with cameras and whatnot that they might need at their locations. To complicate that further, over half of the clerks are new within the last year across the state because of the stress, because of natural attrition with retirements, and just had enough of elections over the last couple of years. So there's going to be several complications, several scenarios. So our encouragement to you is to talk and work with your local clerk, understand if there's anything you can do to help support them. And then at the state level to help you understand and be aware that we are working and planning on several scenarios. We will be softly stood up during the day. Secretary of State's office will be here with us all day. Obviously, we're not going to have any results by the end of the day. There could be several issues that come up for weeks and months, and protests and recounts, and then asking the courts for disqualifications. So our Secretary of State's office is hoping that we have some sort of stance and understanding of where we're at no later than by the time the legislature is in session. So we could not know actually who wins Nevada in several races. If you're paying attention to any of the news networks, we're very tight in several races. So we'll see where things lie. In the emergency management world, we like to say we're apolitical. So our goal is to try and make sure the Secretary of State has the opportunity to do what they need to do to certify your elections as quickly as possible, and we can announce who won the Nevada elections and then let the cards lay in play where they do moving forward. So we have been working diligently the last 6 months, planning, training, and now exercising with the Secretary of State's office for state level response. That's the end of report, Billy, pending any questions.
That's a good report, John. You guys got a lot on your plate when it comes to all those races. So let us know how we can support. We usually mimic whatever LVMP is doing during that time period on standing up the MAC or the ESC. So as soon as I get closer, we'll let you know what we're doing as well down here. Does anybody have any questions for John? I'm hearing none. I'm going to close out agenda item 13 and go to agenda item 14. This is public comment. This is for discussion only. No action may be taken upon a matter raised under this item of the agenda until the matter itself has been specifically included on agenda as an item upon which action may be taken. Public comments may be limited to 3 minutes per person at the discretion of the vice chair. Comments will not be restricted based on viewpoint. To provide testimony during the period of public comment via telephone, please call in any time after 9:30 on the day of the meeting by dialing 1-669-219-2599. Prompted due to the NRAC meeting ID, which is 686-738-8625, then press pound or hashtag for some of you people. When promoted for a participant ID, please press pound. When asked to provide public comment, please press *6 to unmute your phone and *6 again when your comments are complete. We will give the 60 to 90 seconds for the YouTube stream to catch up. This is my turn where I'm going to talk about public comment. I don't know why they gave me basically 15 agenda items today. I think they wanted this meeting to go super long, so I never have to do it again. So I appreciate NDEM and Chief Fogerson for doing that for me, because you guys will definitely vote me out on trying to run the next meeting. Does anybody else have anything for public comment?
Hey, Billy, it's John. You had mentioned Kelly Echeverria earlier, so with her audio cutting out, she asked in regards to the SDICC agenda item, are they not working on progress with Red Cross for reunification purposes because they have the ability to get around HIPAA? So I just wanted to get that out there. That was her question and comment, so that it's on the record, and we will take that into consideration since no action can be taken on this.
Thanks, John. Yep, and she asked me the same question, and there's some issues that we have down here in the south, which I'm sure the same are throughout the rest of the state, and we will address those moving forward. I still think her comment, Clark County was the best, I think that's what she really meant to say. So, anyone else for public comment? The YouTube stream should have caught up by now. I'm hearing none. Closing out agenda item 14. We are going to go to agenda item 15. This is adjournment. Discussion of possible action. You want to adjourn, say aye.
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 Do I hear any opposed, say no. Motion passes. You guys have an amazing day. It's 10 minutes to 12. Enjoy your lunch. Make sure you guys feed the system, be nourished. And if you guys need anything from myself or Chief Ferguson, we're here for you guys. Thank you for the almost 2 hours. I apologize for the length, but there was a lot covered. You guys have a great Tuesday and a good weekend when it gets here. Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Adjourned.